All right, welcome to the video today. We're going to look at InstaComposer, something I recently picked up. I think it's fairly new, released maybe a week or two ago. Currently on sale for $29. And you can pick it up at Plugin Boutique or maybe some other places. So for $29, it caught my attention for some of the unique things that it can do. And I think the program is quite well thought out and worth the purchase in my case because I can already see where I'm going to use it in my workflow. So let's take a look at what InstaComposer can do for us. First of all, it acts like a normal plugin, so you just add it to one of your tracks, and in Cubase I can hook it up to, this is the InstaComposer track right here, and for input is simply input from my keyboard or any controller you have. And for my sound source for the demo today, I simply have it hooked up to the VSL Smart Orchestra. So this is like a tutti full orchestra, so you can hear all the instruments of the orchestra spread out across the keyboard, and it just makes for a quick way to demonstrate what all the tracks inside InstaComposer can come up with very quickly. It's just a very basic way to showcase the MIDI that this is going to generate. So, but for the VSL track here, the input is, again, simply InstaComposer. So it works the same as reMidi or Scalar. You just have to input it to whatever track or sample library that you want it to play. So yeah, the input is InstaComposer for your sample playing library. So that's the same as every other of these type of tools, so that's nice. And you can go to menu here. One of the first things you should do is scale it up because there's a lot going on in this plugin. So let's scale it right up to 180. And let's take a deeper look now at what we have. So for this interface here, we have 5 tracks. It'll generate five tracks at once or one at a time. It will generate up to 32 bars of music or measures of music as far as I know. And it has a bunch of presets. And when you generate a track of MIDI, you can then fine-tune it by adding, changing all these controls down here, which have several different layers of fine-tuned. So it generates MIDI very quickly on quite a big scale, 32 measures of music, and you're allowed to change the parameters of how it generates the music. And if we go here to Tracks View, it allows you to edit all the way right to the per note of every generated MIDI. So you're able to edit as you go. So that's just the fast, quick highlight points of how this works. Now I'm not going to go into the detail of how it all works because there are already some great videos. Plugin Boutique did one, and the makers, WA Productions, have YouTube videos on the basics of how this works. Today, I specifically want to see what it can do for me and my workflow. How it works with reMidi and Scalar, and how it's going to make work faster for me. So that's what I'm going to concentrate on here. So let's take a look at how we can use it with Scalar. Here we have InstaComposer, and I've added in chords down here because you can add in your own custom chords and what flavors of chords, so you can get exactly what you want. And with Scalar, we know that we have performances, and we can turn on performance, and right now I've got a simple common progression playful triads, which is a C major, D minor, E minor, F major, and G major, and it's set up at 2 beats. And so that's exactly what I've set up here in InstaComposer. I can't drag in these chord progression yet just into InstaComposer, but maybe a future add-on, or they could do that. That would be really neat. But right now all I did was write these in. So got my C major, D minor, E minor, and F major and G major. And I set up my loop point to be 10 bars. So right now these two programs are set up to do the same thing. And I'm going to show you the difference. So right now with my Vienna orchestra, the input is set to Scalar 2. So now, having the same progression in both plugins, but the Vienna orchestra is going to be played only by Scalar now with the same chord progression, and it's just going to play the chords. I'm going to turn performance off and play them. All right, so now I'm going to change the input for the Vienna orchestra to InstaComposer, which is set up the same way, and see what we get. So right now, if we just solo the chords, we should get just the chords playing in a similar way. So let's play that. And that's looping through in the same way, except it's a lower octave. But we can change that very quickly and change it up 1 or 2 octaves. Let's go an octave up. So now we're getting very similar results in both programs. But here's the difference now. So we know that Scalar can produce really great chord progressions, and it has a bunch of great performances. It has tons of these pre-made performances. But have you ever wondered or said to yourself, wow, let's say if we go to the first one, Accento. I wish I could turn that on, but have, press another button and say, I want to go into the Accento editor now. Say there was an editor button for each performance, say up here or something. But that's how I see InstaComposer. Because look, Accento plays and it's turned on. So if we change the input for our Vienna orchestra back to Scalar 2 and we play it, go through that chord progression, we get the familiar Accento performance, but that's where it ends. You can't say that I like it generally, but I wish I could change. I wish I could give Accento a bass that is based right on Accento. We could go in here and we could say, we could create another scalar and change it to bass, and now that would give us a bass. And we could make another scalar and we could say, okay, I want a rhythm track. And we could open another one, and that works to a certain extent, and that's one way of doing it. But the way I see this is that you can take whatever scalar chord progression is, you can input it into InstaComposer, and if we switch it back to InstaComposer for the input, we can now say that, okay, we can take this chord progression like we played before, but we can add in endless amounts of variety of different things with it. So add a little bit of pad notes in there. We can add some rhythm. An ostinato. And if we somewhat like what's going on, we can just alternate. So we click off of the tracks, and we can alternate any track that we kind of like. So we can make changes, we can edit. And that's the key to kind of the point here. It does have all the default, endless factory presets of songs and ideas, but it gives you the ability to go in and edit on a very per note level based on the musical theme and chord progression that I'm going to pull from Scalar. So the way I'm going to use it is to, when I use Scalar in the chord progression and I need to get into finer detail and more ideas, I'm going to go to InstaComposer and input the same chords. And so that now I can just, I can say all, hit go, and it's going to just keep giving me endless ideas based on the same theme and the same chord progression. And if I get something that I like that is close, and say I really like this little ostinato, but I just want to alternate that a little bit. Whoops, I should just have that on there, but I had the all button on there. Let's just go to 1. But I can just change that, right? Do an alternate, or I can go right into it and say, oh, I wish there was just one more note there, and just put that note in there in whatever size of note I need. So drag it out, and or adjust the velocity of every note. And something that I haven't talked about yet is, you can quickly just set up all these rules to govern how this MIDI is set up. So say I want the ostinato. It's working good with this chord progression that I created in Scalar, but I want it to have a lot more notes and be more connected, more fill notes. So again, I select number 1 and I say now I want to go in and edit the general idea. So I can say that for track number 1, I want the velocities to be altered a lot, lots of random velocity, but I want that velocity change to be based a lot on the patterns. So I'm going to say, yeah, the velocity changes should be based on the pattern, and it should be a wide range of velocity changes because orchestra library samples respond very nicely to dramatic velocity changes. So now if we go to the editor on track 1, we can see the velocities. I've changed 1 here, but they're generally all straight across the board. If I press regenerate, they should change now according to the rules that I'm setting up here. Now, it also changed the MIDI, but say you like the MIDI, you want to change the velocities separately. So what I could have done or should have done is just said, okay, just randomize the velocity and not change the notes. So I should have used this button. So now you're going to see the velocity of all these notes in the ostinato change, but not the notes themselves. So now I'm getting all these different velocity envelopes and curves changed down here automatically. So it's just, what it is it allows you to come up with interesting little riffs and ideas similar to like Scalar, but it allows you to fine-tune it in ways that you can set rules, but works super quick. And so, all right, then I can say, go back out now that I have some velocity changes based on the chord pattern or the note pattern, which is working good for my samples. But now let's go back to general, and I can say, we can click out of the editor, and we're still working with these ostinato notes. I just want a bunch more notes. So I want to populate more notes. Everything else is looking good. Let's go with more notes. And the reason why it didn't generate more notes is because I think I'm using the wrong rule. Let's see. Number of notes cranked up. Chords, chromatic, scale, smart. So there should be more notes put up here. Okay, maybe I just had to click it again, but now there's a lot more notes, and I want the fill. If if there was a bar that didn't have notes, I'd want it to be filled in with notes. So now I should always be getting a lot of notes with no empty bars. And that's what I get every time I hit go. Right? So I'm getting all these ostinato ideas with a lot of notes. I can turn the note population way down, and now I should get fewer notes. Yeah, so I get fewer notes now. And no fills, and now it should be even fewer notes. Yeah, so now we're down to just a couple straight notes there. But it's always giving us different varied ideas, but based on the rules that we set up here. Now I'm going to say more notes. Again, a lot of fills. Hit go again. Now I should have, again, a lot of notes and no empty bars. So let's play that. And I could do the same thing for the bass, for rhythms. I could say I want a lot, so go to number 2 and say I like this general idea. Do some alternate takes. So now I'm clicking alternate, so just give me a few different alternate takes. But if I totally want to change that and say no, let's get way less population. I want some of the notes to be outside of the scale and the chord, and no fills, but a lot less. And if we go to patterns, I want very short patterns, so very staccato-like, and more repeats, and the variation can stay the same, and yes, so generate repeating. Let's see what we get with some of these rules that we set up here. So hopefully now this rhythm, because it's set on rhythm, should be more staccato, chord-like staccato rhythm. Let's see what we get. And that's what we get. More chord-like staccato rhythms. And if we say that we want the pattern to be long, so a long pattern and less repeating, and we want it to be, say, click this all the way to yes, and we get a different look here. Now say there's few notes, but it's generating. Let's go back and say we want more population, more notes, and see what that does. And so we get a lot more notes in this rhythm. And so you have all these different rules that you can set up to give you different results. And I still have a long way to learn how this all works. But from some of the tests I've done, they do influence how this all works. And so you're allowed to tell the program more of what you want to give you closer to what you, closer the result to be what you want. So it's just a matter of going through here and learning how this all works. The velocity changes works the same way. So it's a very handy way to just get up tons of ideas. Now you can see how many notes are here, but if I want to go back to less notes and more repetition and staccato-like, we're going to say less notes, maybe like that, and zero chromatic, so they're all going to be within the scale and the chord, all the notes. And we can say they're all going to be from the chord this time. And it's going to be not that many notes. And the pattern is going to be short patterns, a lot of repeats, and no variation in the pattern. So this should be very staccato-like when we change it here. So, and that's what we get. We get more staccato, fewer notes, and yeah. So it's you can go through this. I've been going through these and just seeing the different results you can get as you set these different parameters. And I find that it gives you an endless variety of options for the direction you want to go. So let's play this. So now, once you do come up with an idea, and you'll find that you want to go in here and edit, and you can zoom in. So learn all these controls. You can zoom in to exactly where you want to go and do what you need to do. So if I want to change this note up within the constraints, you can see where the lighter notes should be. That'll be within the musical idea. And you can say, oh, maybe I want this note up here to be shorter, and maybe up there, and then go back out, play it. And then from here, what I want to do is say, since I'm using chord progression from Scalar in this case, that chord progression may be the master chord progression for reMidi, for Scalar, and for InstaComposer all at the same time. And so when you have a bunch of instruments here, you can choose what you want to drive your instruments. reMidi, Scalar, InstaComposer, and you can, say if I want InstaComposer just to give me 5 different ostinato ideas with the same master chord progression, I can do that. And set up certain rules, and I can hit one button, say all, and now I could have the last one do ostinatos too. And so now I have 5 different tracks all at one time with different ostinato ideas that were created with in harmony with our master chord progression, which is the same one that we're using for all our tracks. So I know that these musical ideas are going to be, they may not all be what I want, but they're going to be giving me ideas and looks at different ostinatos according to that master progression, which saves a lot of time since I can hit this button, press all, and go through 100 different versions of ostinatos according to this chord progression in a matter of seconds. So you can see how the workflow can be really quick. And then say I like this one, I can simply drag it. I grab this track and I drag it out. And now this ostinato idea is fully MIDI, which I can now make for reMidi in my master reMidi tracks, right? So instead of me writing this like I was doing last week, I set up my chord track up here, and I was writing this all by hand, all these ostinato ideas and shapes. I could have been dragging out ideas and then editing them to be better. But these shapes to start with would have saved me 80% of time. So that's where I see InstaComposer helping me in my workflow. It's like adding another button to Scalar where you can say, okay, I like this performance, but now I want to edit that performance in fine detail. Even though it's not going to be Scalar's performances, but it's going to be a performance based on the same chord progression if you set it up that way. And it just allows you to just go through tons of ideas, find one, edit either inside a composer or inside your DAW, and then just keep going. And I can see me saying, like if I want to make a master track of 25 MIDI tracks for my one reMidi master track, as I've been explaining in my last couple of videos. This is going to save so much time because I can say, instead of just creating 1 or 2 bass tracks, I can easily just drag out, I can set these all to bass, right, and generate a whole bunch of great ideas, maybe alter them a little bit, and then just drag them out one by one by one, and have 10 bass tracks for reMidi, all based on the master chord progression that is used in the theme, right? So it works very well with Scalar and reMidi, and it just allows you to get far more detail and create far more ideas quickly for your themes, right? So I hope this gives you an idea of how to work with this in along with our workflow in general. And for $29, for me, I'm glad I got it. It's going to be part of my workflow, and it's I can already see that this is going to be a little even more interesting because it will generate, like on this first track, if I want to get a little more exotic, I can set it up and say, you know, I don't want all these notes. I'm going to do some jazz now. I don't want all the notes to be just perfectly always in the scale or based off the chord. And so I want some of them to be just chromatic notes. And I may generate something like that. Hit number 1, hit go. Now some of these notes are going to be not quite in the scale or of the chord, which might be great for the jazz thing. And another thing you can do is you can set up some ideas for how many notes will be generated as harmonies. And there's a button down here for harmony. Will the notes that you generate be all in harmony, or will there be how many harmonies and how much variation in the harmony? So you can see how this is going to be even more interesting than first thought. And the same with time and humanization. You're given way more control of your size and your strumming. We're given some control in things like Scalar, but you're not given that much control as far as the performances. And to be able to control how many harmonies are generated, if the notes are in tune of the scale or key, or the timing, humanization, more specific dials for that, you can see how this is going to be, you know, a great tool at $29. Also, your chords can be used inversions, and you can have your chords generate a bass note for the chords. So if we hit go now on all, if we add chords down here, there should be a bass note now, and there's the bass note. And these should be inversions of this down here, because I have inversions turned on. So the chords now use inversions, or you can turn those off. So hopefully in this video you begin to see the value of this $29 tool. For $79 regular price, it's totally up to you. But at $29, for me, it was, yeah, I bought it, and I'm happy I did, because I can see how they're going to add to this in the future. I can see this program as being popular, which means they're probably going to add to it, and it's going to grow, because I can just see, you know, the opportunities to expand on these ideas. And because it's all drag and drop, any of these ideas are just simply dragged in. Hopefully they will allow you to drag in chord progression in the future, because why not just lasso a scalar chord progression, because Scalar does that so well. Just drag that right into this line here, and it should just appear now into InstaComposer. I don't see that as being a big issue, but I don't write the software. But what if they were to do that in the future, right? Can you imagine that? What if they just say, yeah, what if they allowed you to drag in MIDI performances? So I could drag, say if I had these chords down in the performance lane, right? And we know that, you know, when you have performance turned on and all these different tools for your performance lane, and you drag that into here, what if it drags in the progression, and it also drags in the performances? Like, what if you could just drag in performances, and they would divide up on the different tracks here? The chord progression would go down here, and that means that Accento, which you can't really edit, would mean that all of a sudden now you'll be able to edit every part of Accento and make 20 different versions according to your chord progression exactly how you like Accento, with even the velocities per note all the way you like it. Save that as a preset. And so you can see why this got a little bit of interest from me, because with a few little tweaks here and there, adding some draggable MIDI in, you know, I would love it if they would just, you could, you know, pull in any phrase or anything, just drag it to track 1, and that little MIDI chunk, because if you can drag this chunk of MIDI, so to speak, according to the chords here, into your DAW, that means that it should be draggable into here if they would allow it. And just, you could drag that performance on track 1, you have it here, and then you can just endlessly go down and make endless changes to it and alternates of it. So that's my long-winded speech on InstaComposer and why I bought it. And for $29, take a look at it and see if it might be the right tool for you. Hope you're able to make some music somewhere in the world today, wherever you're at, and we'll see you in the next video.